What if the path to real wealth has nothing to do with how much you save, and everything to do with a single concept our entire financial system is designed to hide from you? We're all told the same story. Go to school, get a good job, meticulously track your expenses in a spreadsheet, cut out the lattes, pack your own lunch, and funnel every spare dollar into a 401k. The gurus on TV praise this path of discipline, of slow, steady accumulation. They call it financial responsibility. On the other side, you have the risk takers, the crypto traders and day traders, chasing explosive gains and often finding explosive losses. We're presented with two paths: the slow, safe road to a comfortable retirement, or the reckless gamble for overnight riches. But what if this is a false choice? What if both paths are just different lanes on the same highway? A highway designed to keep you running, but never truly arriving. In this video, we're going to deconstruct this myth. We're not just going to challenge the idea of budgeting your way to wealth. We're going to dismantle it. We will uncover the fundamental mechanism that separates the comfortable from the truly wealthy. And by the end, you will see the world of money not as a ladder you have to climb, but as a game with a hidden rulebook. To understand it, we first have to understand the difference between playing the game and owning it. Labor is any time you trade your hours for dollars. It doesn't matter if it's flipping burgers or performing heart surgery. If you stop, the money stops. Ownership is different. It's when your assets, your ideas, your systems, or your capital make money for you, whether you're working or not. And that single distinction is the key to everything. Most of us live our entire lives on the labor side of the equation, and the most common advice we get is designed to make us more efficient laborers. Think about it. The concept of a budget is, at its core, a tool to manage your wages. It's about optimizing the money you get from trading your time. The same goes for the 4% rule in retirement, or the advice to save 15% of your income. These are survival strategies for the world of labor. They are sold to us as the blueprint for success. Look at the numbers, they say. If you cut out that $5 coffee every single day, you'd save over $1,800 a year. Invest that in the S&P 500, and with compound interest, you'll have over $100,000 in 30 years. This is the math that creates 1,000 articles, books, and financial plans. It feels tangible. It feels responsible. It feels like you're in control. But here is the simple question that shatters the entire model. How many lattes do you have to skip to buy the coffee company? The math doesn't just get harder, it becomes impossible. You can't budget your way to that kind of ownership. The gap isn't a matter of degree, it's a difference in category, and that's the first intellectual hook, the first crack in the foundation. What if the game of saving and budgeting isn't the path to wealth, but merely a treadmill designed to keep you occupied while the real game is being played somewhere else? To see that game, we have to introduce a new lens. The framework of equity versus wages. Wages are what you earn. Equity is what you own. Wages are finite, capped by the number of hours in a day and the market rate for your skills. Equity, on the other hand, is not bound by your time. It's a share in a business, a piece of intellectual property, a stake in a system that produces value independent of your direct effort. When you put money in your 401k, you are buying a microscopic sliver of someone else's equity. You are participating, but you aren't the architect. The uncomfortable truth is this. The primary goal of conventional financial advice is not to make you wealthy. It's to make you a stable, compliant, and productive part of the economic machine, so that you can one day retire without being a burden on the system. What looks like a blueprint for your freedom is, in fact, the operating manual for your cage. If this all sounds too cynical, let's look at the absolute peak of the budgeting and saving philosophy. The FIRE movement. Financial independence, retire early. These are the people who are masters of the wage game. They save 50, 60, even 70% of their high incomes. They are the straight A students of the system we've just described. They achieve their goal. They retire at 40, or even 35. They are free. Or are they? Their freedom is built on a foundation of permanent defense. Their life becomes a delicate calculation, ensuring they never withdraw too much from their nest egg. A stock market crash isn't a buying opportunity. It's a threat to their very existence. A serious medical emergency can undo decades of discipline. They have successfully exited the rat race, but they spend the rest of their lives watching the walls of the maze, praying it doesn't collapse on them. They bought their time back, but they are still fundamentally constrained by the money they saved while they were laborers. If even the most extreme successful practitioners of the saving game end up in a state of fragile preservation, then what game are the truly wealthy actually playing? For the answer, we have to stop looking at what people save and start looking at what they own.
This isn't your fault. Our entire social structure, from the first day of kindergarten, trains us to be good employees. We are rewarded for coloring inside the lines, for following instructions, for getting good grades, which are just performance reviews for children. We are taught to trade our obedience for approval. We then graduate and enter the workforce, where we trade our skills and time for a salary. The psychological pattern is identical. The system doesn't teach us how to build the factory. It teaches us how to be a great worker inside of it.
This is not a new phenomenon. It's a modern version of a very old model. In a feudal system, the serf worked the land and was allowed to keep a portion of the crops to survive. The lord didn't work the land, he owned it. His wealth wasn't tied to his personal labor, but to the productivity of his asset, the land itself. Today, the office has replaced the open field, and the salary has replaced the crops. But the fundamental dynamic remains eerily similar. The one who owns the asset has leverage that the one who works the asset will never have. To understand how to break this cycle, we have to confront the most persuasive lie of all. But I know what you're thinking. What about the highly paid professionals? The surgeon making $500,000 a year, the corporate lawyer billing at $1,000 an hour. Surely they are wealthy. They don't have to budget for lattes. They have transcended the problem. This is the ultimate red herring, the final illusion that keeps the system intact. Let's apply our framework. That surgeon is still engaged in labor. It is incredibly skilled, highly valuable, and extremely well-compensated labor, but it is labor nonetheless. She is trading 1 hour of her time in an operating room for a set amount of money. If she stops performing surgery, her income stops. She has a golden shovel, but she is still digging. Now, consider the person who founded the company that manufactures the robotic surgical arm she uses. That founder doesn't need to be in the operating room. 1,000 surgeons across the world are using his product, generating revenue for his company with every procedure. His wealth is scaling while he sleeps. A high salary isn't wealth. It's a powerful tool that can be used to acquire wealth. It is the raw material. But if you only ever admire the material and never build anything with it, you're left with nothing but a very comfortable trap. Even their greatest strength, their massive income, is still serving the fundamental limitation of trading time for money. So let's assemble the pieces. We started with budgeting, a game of subtraction designed to make your wages last longer. We looked at traditional investing, a slow game of addition, hoping compound interest will outpace inflation over 40 years. We even challenged the idea of a high salary, revealing it as a faster game of addition, but a game still played on the wrong field. All these strategies operate within the world of labor. They are about optimizing your cage. The final breaking point, the moment of true insight, is when you realize your time is the only truly finite resource you have. You can always make more money, but you can never make more time. The entire purpose of building wealth, then, is to sever the link between your income and your time. Equity is the only tool that can do that. It is the ownership of systems, of ideas, of assets that work for you. It's the only path off the treadmill. Now that we understand the machine that separates labor from capital, wages from equity, what does this actually mean for you? We've established the what and the why. The final critical question is how. How does a regular person, without a trust fund or a world-changing invention, actually begin to acquire equity and own a piece of the game? The answer is the key that unlocks everything.